Hello and welcome to the first episode of the No Bullshit Property Podcast, a podcast by us, CERT Property.
I'm Howard.
And I'm Paul.
And we'll be bringing you monthly episodes where we challenge conventions in the property industry as we shape the communities of the future.
Here at CERT, we do things differently, and this podcast will be an extension of that, helping you make better investment decisions no matter where you are on your investment journey.
As this is our first podcast, this episode might not be the most, shall we say, structured, but we hope that it will give you an insight into who we are as a company, how we started out, and our vision for the future. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Welcome to our very first CERT Property Podcast. We're here to talk to you about all things property industry related, all things not property industry related, some serious stuff, some insightful stuff. So we're going to be doing these monthly. And yeah, I suppose, Paul, do you want to say a little bit about who you are first off?
So I'm Paul, I'm the head of property management for CERT Property across our residential and commercial portfolios. Over the next few weeks, we're going to be discussing everything about what we do day to day and inviting some special guests on to discuss what we're trying to create, and our vision is quite outside the box, and we're trying to build communities and create something that's quite a bit different. So without further ado, we'll tell you a bit more about why we do what we do.
Why we do what we do. Yeah, so I'm Howard Lord, so I'm founder and managing director of CERT Property. I'll give you a bit of background on CERT first off. So we're a property developer and investor and investment manager, and we develop residential and commercial properties across the northwest of England. We're based in Manchester. There's 28 of us. We're really diverse, dynamic. Can't think of another word with D, so I'll go with energetic team, and as Paul said, we're looking to try and do things a bit differently, and there's a lot of hyperbole there, but over the next few weeks and months we'll be telling you how and why we do things differently. Shall I go on with a bit about our history?
Yeah, I'd like to know how you started off, Howard.
Have you not heard that like a million times already?
I have, but I would like to hear it again.
Well, it's not like I like telling this story or anything. So I started what is now CERT back in 2006 as a property consultancy, and I was 23 at the time. Thought I knew everything about everything, and at that time, the property industry was booming. It was too easy to make money in property. Banks were lending money to everyone. Prices were rising non-stop, and I just saw a lot of people making a lot of money from property, and I thought, I can do that. What do they know that I don't? So I really had no intention of getting involved in property. I anticipated going off to some far-flung corner of the world and getting a job. I actually had a job offer for a shipping company out in Africa. But yeah, so I set up my own property company at 23. And like I say, that was 2006. And then 12 months later, the global financial crisis came, and what went from an industry where it was very easy to make money, all of a sudden overnight went to very, very difficult to make money. The whole industry came to a standstill. So great timing. My timing in life has improved, although you probably won't be able to tell that from my timing on these podcasts, because I reckon I'm going to be telling some really poor jokes, but yeah, we'll see.
Okay.
Yeah. So 2007, 12 months in, bought my first place, bought a stupid, expensive car because things were going well, and then the whole situation changed. But somehow managed to persevere and make it through. Got involved in all different aspects of property, which at the time, it was a tough learning curve, constantly having to knock on new doors and speak to people, trying to convince them that I was an expert in the field, and, I'd had like 1-2 years experience, and I'm trying to convince people to invest millions of pounds with me. So it was a very steep learning curve, but I think that is why we are where we are today. The learnings from that really tough time set us up really well to now be really willing to do things differently. I think that was one of the main things I learned, and also to value perseverance and challenge the industry. I came into it from the outside and have from the very beginning always wanted to try and make a difference by doing things my own way. So that's our history. Into sort of early 2010s, we were a property consultancy. I got a bit frustrated being a consultant for other people, and I was acting as a sales consultant, acquisitions consultant, development consultant, but ultimately a lot of the clients, and I was going to say all the clients, but a lot of the clients that I worked for, I was getting frustrated by them not delivering what they said they were going to deliver. So made the decision to actually then become a developer myself and grow a development business. So that was the foundation of what is now CERT. We started developing our own projects, I think 2015, 2016, and we're now developing over £250 million worth of residential and commercial projects, and we manage nearly £100 million worth of existing investments on behalf of investors. So, part of the whole purpose of this podcast is to share some of those learnings, some of the insight from the journey, and hopefully help people learn about property, make more insightful investment decisions, or, just be something as a point of reference, even if you're just looking to buy a house. So I'll stop talking about myself for now, because...
excellent summary and pitch. But I'm sure the detail that our listeners are interested in is why the name CERT?
Oh my God. Wow. As you can tell, this is completely unscripted because that is the worst possible question, and I hate it when people ask that. So, it's really embarrassing. So the name CERT actually comes from when we were going through the financial crisis, 2017, 2018. As I say, the property industry was really tough to make any money. And back in those days, the government had just launched what was called the Carbon Trust, which was giving loans to small businesses to reduce their carbon footprint. And because I had a lot of contacts in the property industry who owned a lot of property, I thought, well, I may as well leverage those contacts I have by approaching them and pitching them to see if they wanted to reduce their carbon footprint, and learnt myself how to fill out these applications, make the submissions. So we offered it as a service to make carbon trust grants for landlords, and we called that business CERT Solutions. So CERT in the CERT Solutions stood for Carbon and Energy Reduction Technology. Catchy. So at the time, CERT Property wasn't called CERT Property, it was called Land Search, which wasn't my most inspired moment. I could have thought of something a bit more inventive, but it was very Ron Seal, it was very does what it says on the tin. And I thought, well, it's confusing for people. One moment I'm Land Search, the next moment I'm CERT Solutions, so I should just call Land Search CERT Property, and then we've got CERT Solutions. CERT Solutions didn't last that long. The government closed down the Carbon Trust scheme, I think after 18 months, 2 years. So the sort of business that it had just disappeared when that closed down. So CERT Solutions disappeared, and I thought, well, CERT's quite catchy, it's quite snappy, a dead cert, it's a certainty. So I ran with it.
Great. I would like to add at this point, I did have an offspring business at one point called Certitude, but it didn't go down very well.
Forgot about that.
Yeah, it was a very good idea, to be fair. It was going to be very dynamic in the city.
Very dynamic.
So I'd like to discuss about, what motivates us to do what we do. And I think if I think about myself and what motivates me, I've always been interested in being a bit of a rule breaker, a bit of a rebel, and challenging the norm. And my background, although there's another story in this which we'll talk about at another time, I worked in retail, and then I worked for a really large national property services company. And I was really frustrated there about the way in which they did things and how working in property was very corporate, very procedure based, and actually not a very good experience for both the staff and the customers. Actually, I was really quite downtrodden by all the negative customer comments you got and all the bad experiences, and how people would say moving house and buying a house and acquiring property was one of the most stressful times of their life. And I was like, but wait a minute, when I moved to Manchester and I got the keys to my first rental apartment, that was the most exciting time in my life, because I was moving to a big city with amazing opportunities, mostly amazing bars and clubs. Again, that's another story. But how could we make this whole experience better? And I really wish that when I'd moved to Manchester that I'd had a bit of a mentor to tell me where was cool and where was not, and had a community to join. So it was always kind of my vision that I wanted to do something a bit different and actually make the whole experience something that was really enjoyable, exciting. And I actually met Howard on the off chance through business, and he kind of shared that vision in that we could create something that was actually quite cool and would actually make people really happy about property, because at the end of the day, property is where we live, where we work, where we socialise. It's not just bricks and mortar, you know, the different things that you do inside property, how you design them, how you construct them, what's in them, you know, they form the basis of our lives. And you know, for me, it's one of the most important things we do, and I'm very passionate about the experience inside that. So that's a little insight into kind of what makes me tick. What about you?
Well, I think that's why we work so well together, because the first thing for me is, as I said earlier, you always looked from the outside in on the property industry, and always looked at it, like you said there, like, why are things done the same old way? Why is there this procedure? And challenging that, and not being afraid to do it differently. And I think that fits more deeply with personalities as well. So I said at the very beginning, you know, CERT is a really diverse company. We've got almost an even mix, or we've got more female than male. No, about even mix of female and male.
And a guy who comes in on roller skates.
Indeed.
It's a bit like Studio 54.
But I've always tried to find people who have, well, in a nice way, who are almost misfits, because that's what I felt in the property industry for a long time.
It's good to know.
Yeah, but I think got that common theme of people from a diverse range of backgrounds who aren't scared to challenge the norm. And the other theme that motivates me is bringing people together, is creating communities. And probably, like, if people on here are listening to like property podcasts, they're probably rolling their eyes, because it's just such a buzzword talking about communities, because everyone says it, and I don't think many people have much conviction in what they actually mean when they're talking about community. But community is bringing people together through a shared experience, or a shared purpose, or a shared space. And for me, community is so important, and I probably won't get so deep on this one, given it's our first podcast, because of my background, my family situation. I should probably save that as a later episode piece, shouldn't I?
Or a therapy piece.
But for me, community's been really important, because I felt like I lacked it throughout my early life. So I've wanted to bring people together. I've wanted to make people feel part of something. I'm privileged to have gone on a journey that's put me in a position where I can, and we as a business can, create communities that allow people to feel part of something. So I think it's the same as what you were saying there, Paul. Like, you came to Manchester and you were kind of looking to belong to something. You wanted someone who could show you where the cool kids hung out, you know, where you could socialise, where you could meet people. And it's about a sense of belonging. So in terms of the motivation, I think we're saying the same things, just differently. But yeah, that's why we work well together, because of that sense of, you know, common goal, and that ultimately is what a community is. You might say we're on the same wavelength.
#wavelength.
#wavelength. In joke there. So it's kind of been our theme for the day, and that's something, again, probably should have said this at the beginning, like, one of the things I want to do on this podcast is talk about weekly learnings. And on a Friday monthly, we have a lunch and learn with our staff, and we were talking about suppliers and suppliers to the business, and, you know, talking about what were key drivers for working with a certain supplier. And obviously the service a supplier provides or the product is really important, but something that we determined was of equal or more important, and whether that supplier is a kitchen fitter, whether it's an architect, whether it's a cleaner, or whether it's a software provider, it's really important to be on the same wavelength. What are your thoughts on wavelength, Paul?
Yeah, I agree. You know, you instantly have a rapport with somebody when you connect with them, and I think that's how you buy into a business. It's through that personal connection that you have with somebody, and a business can have any name above the door, but it is the people inside that make it. And you know, we're not just a team in here where we deal with a number of external companies every day, but there's always been that person you've connected with in order to make that engagement with that company. And we often think, you know, when a really key person leaves, you've lost that connection, and if that's not been replaced in that way. And we actually discussed earlier about, you know, and this is something I've thought about a lot this year, is actually believing in your gut, because you can form a connection with somebody and you just believe it in your stomach. You just believe that it's the right thing to do. But at the same time, you could work with a friend in business, and there could also be that gut feeling that it's not quite right. And I think we don't pretend that we haven't made mistakes in the past. And I think sometimes, with the benefit of hindsight, we can look back and think, actually, my gut at that time wasn't quite right on that particular thing. And one of my New Year's resolutions, as you know, is to put that
JDI.
It's JDI, which is I'm actually trademarking that as a just do it point.
I think Nike beat you to that.
Oh yeah. However, I am going to trust my gut going forward. I'm actually going to throw a curveball out there.
Oh, okay. I was just thinking of what I was going to say next. That's really insightful.
I'm going to throw a curveball out there and say, how do you think we've come out of the last 2 years different?
Wow, completely off script and off topic, thank you. How have we come out of the last 2 years different? I think we've come out of the last 2 years different. Okay, I'm going to address it first off as a business, like as a community within the business. So one thing we were really keen on was keeping as much continuity with people's lives as possible through, you know, a really challenging time, and a time where that continuity was disrupted like never before. And I think it's given us a greater sense of, I can't think of the word that I want now. I want to try and use a different word other than community, but it's given us a greater sense of shared beliefs and shared goals, because we really supported each other through the pandemic. And, you know, we did the online quiz and all that, but we were checking in on each other, going round to each other's houses, helping each other out with things when it was allowed. Delivering groceries to the doorstep. Caveat. Yeah, we were really supporting each other above and beyond. You know, we have come out embracing different ways of working, because something that I really believe in is trusting in people, and I've done it from day one, and I'm too trusting, if anything. And with the wrong person, you can get hurt personally and professionally if you trust too much. But for me, it's a default position. But by giving people that trust through the pandemic to get on with what they need to, and to support them when they need it, like I say, we've come out in a really, really good place. With that means we've been more willing to embrace flexible working policies. We've been more willing to, you know, give people a different work-life balance. And I think that expectation's changed from the pandemic. So from a business point of view, I think that's how we've changed. Is, you know, we always said we trusted people, but then we were really put to the test to trust them. We did, and people have felt that we all are closer and better as a team because of it. Business-wise and in our projects, I think we've changed how we approach projects, you know, and that might be from how something's designed, or that might be from how something is approached in a presentation kind of way. And I'll give an example that during the midst of the pandemic, we needed to do a pre-app for a development project that we've got. It's a community living project, which we'll talk about more on a later podcast, but we're trying to revolutionise how people live, you know, small goals. And we needed to present this revolutionary concept to the planners, the planning authority. And we only had the platform of Teams or Zoom. So I was like, well, it's so awkward trying to convey this whole concept. Let's record a video and send it and play it as part of this presentation. And our consultants were like, well, that's not done. That's not how you do it. And we're like, well, yeah, we want to do it differently. We've got technology to enable us to convey this message in a time we wouldn't otherwise be able to convey it. So let's take advantage of that. So we've changed how we approach things. We've changed how we approach projects in terms of design. And I think it's also strengthened us as a business in terms of how our employees feel trusted and how we're more willing to trust them.
I think what I'm really proud of during that time is the real grit and determination and resilience that we had, because I think it was quite easy to down tools and to stop what you were doing, and really we had this, I mean, circumstance actually led us to the fact that we had over both of the lockdown years, we had big developments that we're completing. So we definitely had a task on our hands, and actually the whole team really pulled together, and the whole, like I say, the grit and the determination that everybody had to get everything over the line against the odds, because by no mean feat did we do that. But actually how it brought everybody together, there's a part of me that kind of bit controversial here, but there's a part of me that actually quite likes the lockdown, because it did bring us so much closer. And then when we returned to the office, the actual teammanship that we had, the dynamic totally changed within the team, and people had formed such a connection and such a bond. And even though we were all at home separately, no man was an island without the other. Everybody had to work together, and it was just that when we came back to the office, and incidentally we got new office premises when we came back into the office, which was actually designed as a result of the lockdown as well, and how we wanted to work going forward. But it was so exciting to come back and see everybody, because we'd actually formed such close bonds in that time. And now, I don't want to be one of these people, and you might think this is corny, but I think we all actually genuinely really like coming to work, albeit, you might not want to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning every morning and come, but I think, we do actually like being together, and I think that resonates with the people we work with, and I think that's why we have repeat business with people. I think that's why people rate us as we do, because I think that passion comes across, because we are like a family. That's very corny, but
you could say we're all on the same wavelength.
Oh yeah, hashtag
wavelength. Before you threw me the curveball, and I'm going to sound bitter going back to this now, because I wanted to say something about wavelength and the external consultants bit. Well, not just external consultants, but generally. I'm going to talk about something that I don't like. Wavelength is so important for me. Like I've always said through my career, like I only do business with people that I like. It's really fundamentally important, because if you've not got that wavelength, you've not got that rapport, and even if an alternative product is better or an alternative service is better, I think I would actually pick the consultant or the supplier that I got on with better. And that doesn't mean like going out for drinks. And this is the thing I was going to say that I don't like, is I hate companies that like put a business development manager in front of you whose job is to pretend to be your mate. And actually,
get you pissed.
Yeah. I mean, I don't mind that bit, but like, so that's my point about wavelength, is when I say I would pick someone that I get on with more, not just like I like going out, getting pissed with them, but actually someone that you genuinely connect with. Like, you might be talking about brick reveals and how different councils have different requirements in terms of brick reveals, and get really passionate about it. And I want to do business with the person who also gets passionate about brick reveals. I wonder how many people actually know what I've just said there, but please go and Google it if you don't. Go on, what's a brick reveal?
It's not me, I'm passionate about brick reveals. I'm quite passionate about going to Ibiza this summer. I'm not that passionate about brick reveals, but we do have a similar wavelength in some areas.
Well, like that's like with a business development manager. You know, this guy doesn't have an in-depth knowledge. Oh, sorry, business development managers. Some of you do. The average business development manager doesn't have an in-depth knowledge of what product it is he's trying to sell. So a company that employs a business development manager, for me, immediately I'm a bit turned off, because they're not on my wavelength. Because I want to talk to someone who's an expert in what they do, who's passionate about what they do, who knows every little detail about what they do. And I'm going to get enthusiastic about it if they are. You know, you've got to, in development and property, you've got to deal with so many different disciplines, and you've got to be a little bit enthusiastic about all of them. Like earlier, I was in a meeting talking about waste management, and I was getting excited about it because it's important.
It is a good topic.
It is. I mean, I know your passion for utilities.
I love utilities, especially after April 1st.
But, you know, actually, in our lunch and learn earlier, we took one project as a case study, a development project, and said how many suppliers did we actually deal with in that one project. So that's just dealing with one main contractor. So we're not counting the subcontractors. So all of the construction works, we're just talking about one party there. But then around that, there's still 81 other people that we contracted with. So you've got to have your head into so many different things in development. And why would you want to get your head into it when the person you're talking to doesn't really have a deep knowledge? How are you going to feel confident that they are going to handle that part of the journey with the level of insight and expertise that's required? So I'm probably saying there, like, product's important, but wavelength as well. Like, you know, I want to speak to that guy that's passionate about it, because I'm passionate about what I do. So I want to speak to the guy that's passionate about what he does, whether it's waste management, whether it's lighting, whether it's flooring, whether it's kitchens, whether it's architecture, whatever, whether it's planning, whatever it is. Like, they're on my wavelength if they're dead passionate about it and they geek out on window reveals.
Great. If you feel like you're on this wavelength, drop us a DM. And on that note, we'll close episode 1.
We're that time already.
We are.
Well, that's because of my passion, and we're just on the same wavelength there.
And my takeaway is I was a business development manager when I met you. So I'll have a think about that tonight. Thanks for listening, guys.
Thank you. Hopefully we didn't bore you too much. See you next time.